We do too many projects for political reasons.
Are we getting value for money?
We're getting dumber and dumber and dumber.
We already have a lot of assets, but we're not using them efficiently, and that is frustrating.
What is the problem we're solving, and how do we do it better, cheaper and faster?
Auckland pays more taxes into the centre than Auckland region receives back from government.
Hey, Shamubeel, thanks for coming along here. It's really nice to have you with your good economic background to come here and have a chat. Folks, he's not been primed to have any particular views. These are his views, and I've got to live with them, good, bad or indifferent. And so I've been at it for about 20 months now. I inherited a $375 million loss and masses of debt and moderately dysfunctional council. How do you reckon I'm going?
I'll tell you what I'm really enjoying. The fact that you're pragmatic. I think that's what we need in a mayor. People who are able to bring these disparate groups together and deal with the big issues. And Auckland has some big issues and big opportunities, right? It's the opportunities that excite me. It's the issues that we're going to get on top of. So I'm really happy to see that you're taking a pragmatic approach and getting that stuff sorted and putting in some long-term plans in place. And, you know, the budget stuff is the budget stuff, but the LTP for me, that was a big win.
I'm one vote of 21.
Yeah.
And it's quite a disparate group. There's 21 views on just about everything. I am socially very liberal, but economically pretty conservative. You know, I'm quite proud of the fact that we've just set the lowest rates in the country.
Yeah, and I think it matters, right? Because everybody's going through the cost of living crisis. People are feeling very raw and hard done by. And we want everybody to be making the right decisions. It's not necessarily just what's the increase in rates. It's about making sure we also do the right things with the rates revenue once we get it. And it's that scrutiny of how much money do we raise and how are we spending it. In the LTP, again, to me, that was really important that you set such a strong direction as a council of the kinds of things that we will prioritise.
Yeah, we haven't just chopped to get there. We're still actually spending more on infrastructure and public transport and the things that people really not want and need.
Totally.
I was very pleased to come up with a good solution for the three water fiasco that I inherited. The new government really want us, they're in kind of revenge mode at the moment. They can cut everything that the other ones have done. And I don't mind that. I mean, some of the things like the underground, grossly excessive, unfortunately never started light rail was a good thing to can. But we still have to run public transport. We still have to do a lot of good things. We still and we still had to get the water thing right. And we've managed to do that for the 7% increase, which is pretty modest, and it still allows them to fix all the pipes that are broken.
Yeah, look, I think we can be pretty proud of the work that Watercare does as well. They have done quite well, considering compared to the other water entities around New Zealand.
Compared to my other CCOs too, I've got to say.
And so I'm pretty proud of the work they've been doing, and I've been to see some of the projects. They're really quite impressive, what they've been working on. The fact that we've now sort of tidied up the financing end is really helpful. And for me, the big thing with Auckland is we still have some big issues with congestion, lack of capacity. We have to keep at it on the infrastructure side for a long time to come to get on top of it.
Yeah, well, infrastructure is my background. I can't be, you can confuse me about opera and art galleries and things like that, but I know about infrastructure, and I've owned and built infrastructure, and I think that, and you're right, Watercare is probably the least of my problems of the CCOs. It was the one that was going right. The whole problem with the water thing was a balance sheet issue, and I'm a great believer
the funding and financing part, isn't it?
In that part, yeah, but I'm worried in the a lot of the commentary about infrastructure is all about new ways of financing. I'm into what is the problem we're solving, and how do we do it better, cheaper, and faster? Because financing dumb projects is not a step forward. Just make sure that we don't do dumb projects, and we do too many projects for political reasons, for getting re-elected somewhere, rather than for what is the problem we're solving. I'm a great believer in getting the maximum out of our assets And this is where things like time of use charging and dynamic lanes, and I'm very upset that they haven't got on as quickly as that with AT.
We need to do a lot more of that. We already have a lot of assets, but we're not using them efficiently. And that is frustrating because it shouldn't be so difficult for us to put the buses on the roads that we already have.
Totally. And I used to, up until recently, I've been living for the last 7 years above the Spaghetti Junction. You look out the window there, the roads they're empty at night.
They're big, right?
And they're big and they're empty at night. And other countries have them full of trucks at night. And so I've already got the port a bit of progress. I've taken that from a not-for-profit to actually a profit-making business, which is a great step forward. And I've got them already doing.
It should be an asset for us.
Yeah, well, it should have been. It hasn't been.
But it should be.
But it is going to be.
It's an extraordinary piece of real estate. It's a business that in every other place makes money. Why not here?
Well, I've told them that too. I said, if you don't make money, I'm selling it. And, we can make money. We'll start making money. And then start charging. We've got time of use charging there already, but not enough of, I think.
Yeah. The rates are so low, right? I mean, when I've spoken to
they're ludicrously low. They've got to go up. They're half the price of Australia. And then you'll hear some completely ill-informed commentator saying, if you put the prices up, the cost of living will go up. Mate, I'd be the only council that's ever brought anything in on a container. Typically, we'd have $20,000 worth of goods in the container. As soon as we land it and send it out to the shops, it's $40,000 worth of goods.
That's right.
So $100 extra bringing it in, who's going to know? But it does make the profit profitable, which it should be. And I want to actually push the prices for the trucks going in there much higher during the day.
Absolutely.
And much lower at night.
Well, we've got to send strong signals and incentives to change behaviour.
Exactly.
Right? Because it's not that we are excessively short of infrastructure, but we're not using it smart.
Bingo. And so infrastructure commentators in Wellington, listen, because I'm a bit sick of people in Wellington telling us what Auckland needs and sending Wellington people up here to tell us it. I'm in charge of a third of New Zealand. I'm a businessman, and this is a business centre. Let's do business things here. And it kind of really annoys me. Some good ideas have been wrecked by Wellington telling us what to do.
I know you don't like Wellington. It's okay.
It's their interference. That's what I don't like. It's not about the people. Just because you got beaten by the Blues, you should get over that.
But I think that the challenge is the way that politics works. Wellington and central government looks down on local government as kind of like a
it's the central government thing. If the Parliament was in Huntly, I wouldn't like Huntly. But it's the idea that civil servants in Wellington know better than what we do up here is a ludicrous idea. And in fact, it wasn't even Labor, for instance, dramatically increased the number of bureaucrats in Wellington. It wasn't even good politics. They all voted for the Greens. So so we got nothing out of it, not even the people who liked them. So there's been much talk about a city deal, but a city deal basically to me isn't a document we sign. It's just being treated as a third of New Zealand, as a regional government, not as the mayor of Horowhenua, wherever that is.
I know where Horowhenua is.
Oh, good on you.
Been there.
Okay, I'm sure it's nice. But they've got the same parking fines as we've got. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, it's because, as you know, the way that we write legislation, we try to do one size fits all.
Yeah, right.
And Auckland is not like the rest of New Zealand.
No, it's not. It's better and worse in equal ways.
Absolutely. I mean,
it's different.
It's completely different. To me, I look at Auckland. I look at Auckland's economy. It is dynamic. It's big. It's strong. It's completely different from the rest of New Zealand, as it should be.
Yeah.
That's what the big city of the country should be.
It is supposed to be a driver in certain things. The other bit is we know best what Auckland should look like and how it's developed. I know where the growth is. If rather than planners and rather than people, bureaucrats telling us where the growth is, look where the growth. People like Costco come here. They don't make a mistake. They've gone out in the northwest.
Because of
that's
the
where our
catchment.
growth.
That's where the population growth.
That's where, and it's where we're moving. And so let's start thinking about it. The government have worked out that the northwest corridor is where the next concentrated spend on PT and mass transit is, rather than in other places. But yesterday, Mr. Bishop, he's not a bad guy actually. I quite like him. But and he came out with a big announcement, some of which is quite good. I mean, look out there, out the window. There's the CBD, 40% of those office buildings are empty, actually. I'd like to see them converted much more easily into apartments because all of the infrastructure is there, underutilised. And so we've got stupid rules about seismic strengthening. We don't have earthquakes here. And so those rules are not helpful, and they're preventing simple things happening. The fire rules are nuts. When you convert a building from an office at one person per 10 square metres into an apartment, 1 per 50, there's 1/5 of the people there. Why do we have to have more fire rating? Don't understand it.
No, I think we've kind of missed a trick with the conversion of the older office stock in our cities. The same issue is affecting Wellington, which has the additional issue of earthquakes.
They do actually have earthquakes. So
yeah, but the buildings are not terrible.
No.
And so there is all this capacity with all the existing infrastructure, and yet we are obsessed with sprawl and growth in the fringe. And it's fine to have some growth in the fringe because people want choices, but the reality is that we can't afford to just put in more and more infrastructure.
I mean, yesterday's announcement that somewhere in Wellington is going to determine where my city ends and the countryside starts. Well, you can forget that, mate. I mean, Megan Woods tried to take hand planning Auckland to Kaingaora, and I made her walk back from that. She didn't like that much, but she did. And I was in Pukekohe talking to business leaders out there a couple of days ago, and National Party royalty, which is Sir Bill Birch, got up and made an impassioned speech where he didn't want to lose the character of Pukekohe. He didn't want it to be filled up between houses between there and Papakura. He wanted to keep it as a nice rural town, and also I want to look after our land, vegetable growing soils. If we're not careful, all of our vegetables have to come from Kaitaia because there's not everywhere that can grow vegetables.
But isn't the high performing soils piece of legislation, doesn't that help protect some of that land?
To a degree, but then again, we're going to have announcements yesterday that we're going to have intensification, we're going to have sprawl, and we're going to determine where your growth is. Well, you're not actually.
But are we then going to pick the amount of infrastructure that it truly costs to build out there? Because, we're not going to give freebies and handouts to people who are on the fringes because the infrastructure out there is expensive.
Well, we sort of have inherited that. I mean, there's a myth about 60,000 people going to live in Drury, and you think, hang on, mate.
What's the marginal cost of infrastructure per house out there?
Well, the other thing is 5,000 people there now. Well, Drury will grow, and the good part about it is there is industries coming, because what I do like about what Bishop said was to have
mixed use.
Mixed uses.
Yep.
You don't want suburbs like Howick where there's only houses. You want to have businesses and houses.
Yeah, and services.
I mean, I live in the city, and there's cafes downstairs.
Wonderful.
And it's all stuff all around you. You don't have to go everywhere. It's how you should live. But I like that part of it. But the idea that it's suddenly going to be 60,000 because Fletcher's have bought some land, that's not a good answer.
It's not a good answer, but to go back to the policy that was announced yesterday, what I do like about it is the politicians, regardless of their stripe, are still trying to figure out what progress they can make. The fact that they're trying is a good thing. Wind back 10 years, we were just denying that there is a problem.
That's possibly true, but then on the other hand, you see they inflict immigration on Auckland without ever asking us.
We don't have a policy on immigration.
I think we've got enough Uber drivers, if that's okay. I like Uber drivers. I use Uber a lot.
But it's a waste, right? We bring in these people and we don't use them for the skills and qualifications that they have. It's a bizarre setup.
We have the most educated Uber drivers in the world. It's completely mad. And
did you know the statistic? In the last 10 years, New Zealand's population has grown by 800,000 people through net migration. We've never had that in a 10-year period before. So we've kind of done this almost by accident. We've kind of grown our population without figuring out how do we build the homes, the infrastructure, the social services.
That's driven again by Wellington, by Central Parliament, because that increases the GDP, even if no real growth.
Not in a good way.
Not in a good way, but they can say, GDP's gone up. But and they wonder why councils are not mad about that, because everyone arrives here, gets off the plane, and they want to have a road and a house and a footpath and a power supply and a radio and fibre to the place. That's all paid by the people here already. And so we're not funded for growth. So that all the advantages go to Wellington. They get an increase in GST and they won't give any of it back. And I've asked for the GST back and I want it back. Are you listening?
Well, did you know that in net, Auckland pays more taxes into the centre than Auckland region receives back from government?
I know exactly that. I've been telling them. And we're not happy about it. What we get back instead of money, your job is just to collect the money in Wellington and send it back. Not keep a whole lot of the money and send back instructions as to what I'm supposed to do.
I agree, but I think there's this weird kind of perception outside of Auckland that Auckland is a leech on the rest of New Zealand, rather than Auckland actually being a fairly big net contributor to redistribution, right? And to me, the thing that's missing is...
Good on you for saying that.
Well, central government it's very easy for central government to devolve all the crap to local government, but then not give the resourcing, not give the tools, and then go, oh, isn't it terrible that you're not doing a good job?
Oh. That's what annoys me. And I mean, I get lectures from people in Wellington who've done anything about business telling me about how to run the place. Come on, give me a break.
Well, this is it. I mean, of course, there are things that we can do better in every part of government, but to say that local government is a failure because it's not delivered everything is not true. There are some things that are not happening because we haven't set it up right. We've designed for it to fail. I mean, Auckland Council interacts with something like 168 pieces of legislation that tells it what to do.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
Oh, thank you for that.
Right?
Well done. And I mean, on top of that, even when we can make a decision, we're overridden by some things. Like, I'm here for the kind of the big things, and I'm here for the people who are paying rates and struggling. Yeah. You look out the window there, and whole swathes of people out there are struggling to pay their mortgages. Yeah. And I campaigned on the fact that things are going to get rough, and the media kept saying, how do you know? And I said, geez, I've been around a while.
And this recession is really tough.
A whole bunch of people out there are paying rates so that we can own the shares at the airport, for goodness sake. At least I've solved that problem.
Well, I really like the future fund idea, right? And the reason I like that idea is because it sets up a apolitical wealth fund for Aucklanders. Right. At the moment, we've got all these assets like we have water care and other things. In the future, we should be able to bring some of those assets into our wealth fund. And the wealth fund should be there for us to be able to grow this wealth and to be able to pay for the things that we want.
And builds a bit of a
resilience.
Fund. We don't have any fund. The only asset we had here was shares in the airport that flooded quicker than Queen Street, and a port which wasn't making any money, which is now an asset. It's only an asset when it makes money.
That's right.
It's a liability if it doesn't make money.
The thing that interests me, though, is what's the reason for holding on to those shares or investments, right? So when I think about an entity like Auckland, when we're doing it on the behalf of Aucklanders, what we really want is our money to be apolitical, because I think that's important, right? We don't want it to have big changes because there's a change of government.
Thank you.
And we want it to be long-term in nature. And, the way that I see a lot of other organizations do it, it's about being globally invested, very diversified funds. It's all easy, so you don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
What you focus on is your business of running the council.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there was a whole lot of nonsense. People thought it would be taken away if we sold nonsensical.
With the airport shares?
Yeah,
Well, we
didn't even have enough shares to put a director on.
Yeah, but I think it's emotional because, as you know, the history of it.
There's no unjustifiably.
There's a lot of history of where the shares from Auckland Council came from, but I think where we are today as a super city and the needs of the city, needs of the region, I don't think we can justify holding on to a stake that was so small that it didn't give us a strategic stake anyway.
No.
We were not able to influence the strategy. We were not able to influence the board. Well, what's the point?
I agree. You're preaching the converted here, but I hope some other people will come along with us. And talk about, you just said something earlier about being apolitical, and I'm fairly apolitical, but I don't like sudden changes due to an election. And
that's right.
One of the things I'm trying to get underway which is desperately missing, and it shocked me that it wasn't here, is an integrated transport plan for Auckland. We have plans for Africa here, but they don't actually cover everything. All the plans were either about moving people or moving cars, but nothing that's had, well, the most important thing to move around a place is freight, actually. Wasn't even included. So I want something that covers all of those things. I want something that's balanced so that the correct amount of rail gets put in amongst it. And rail, for some reason or other, we were the only Western country that wasn't building freight rail for the last 20 years because somebody said, rail doesn't make a profit. Well, it won't make a profit if you don't look after it or design for it. But if you're really worried about greenhouse gases, the easiest win is to get freight off trucks onto trains.
Without a doubt.
A lot about trying to get
that throughput
everyone riding a bicycle. That's not going to work.
Well, the throughput is extraordinary. right? With rail, with freight rail.
Yeah.
The throughput is extraordinary, and you can be much more efficient in your timing and those kinds of things. Although I understand our rail network in Auckland would need some expansion to be able to do that efficiently.
Well, exactly.
We kind of share the passenger and freight at the moment, which is very
Which
unusual.
is very hard to do. You know,
yeah.
they don't go well together. And I'm trying to price the trucks off the roads during the day and force and as you say, the only things that make people move are fear and money, but the money has to be at a size to make them move. And
it has to be incentive enough.
If the cost of getting a truck to the warehouses is so high during the day that it's cheaper to open at night, they'll start to open at night. At the moment, it's not quite enough to do that.
No.
The other part about it, we've got various roads of national party significance being plonked on us without any justification other than the fact that, I stood and said I was going to do this. We've got, to me, the most important part of missing link in our infrastructure ecology is probably the rail line between Avondale and Southdown.
That's right.
Which we own the land for. It's in the hands of...
We could do it.
We could do it straight away. We don't have to buy anything. Don't have to have a resource consent. It doesn't have to have fast track. It just have to have somebody say, that's actually a better idea than a motorway in Papakura to Papakura.
But it's a no-brainer, because if you close that, you create that loop in the isthmus as well.
So it means your freight can go out to come in from the south, head out to the growing northwest. The most congested
I'm
place.
convinced.
Yeah,
I'm convinced.
I've got to say it out loud in case somebody sensible watches this. But
it's
it's
so
very
true,
important. It should be just before COVID, I spoke to the New Zealand Freight Conference when I was doing that up in North Island supply chain strategy, which the previous occupant of this office I didn't like much.
Right.
Because it had long words in it or something. We asked him what was the most important single thing that should be done in New Zealand now, and it was the Avondale to Southdown rail and the rail out to Northport.
Yeah.
And they're not on the list.
Time. Well, because, as you know, the National Party is ideologically opposed to rail.
But I mean, it's not ideological opposed to making common sense financial decisions.
If you're rational, then you would absolutely do it. Because if you're rational, the bang for buck on that little investment in that corridor between Avondale and South is extraordinary, because it completes the network. Oh. And network effects are everything in transport. And we know this, right? You don't need to be a genius to work this out.
No, you don't need to do, and we don't even need to do consultation because the land is there.
I know, but we have had this for so long. We have kicked the can down the road in successive governments because we don't have the balls to do it.
Well, I've got them. I mean, what annoys me is that those are our grandfathers put that land aside for that.
Because
and subsequently, we're getting dumber and dumber and dumber. And that is an absolute core thing that should be done. And I'm glad you see that. And if anyone's watching, I haven't twisted his arm. I didn't know what your view was on that.
No.
Other than this, I think you and I are connected by economic rationality rather than any emotion.
Well, this is it. So the rail picture in Auckland, it's a rational story in terms of rail has to be a significant part of our transport future, both in terms of moving people and goods. There is no other way we could be able to cope. We'll never have enough roads to move the people that are going to live in Auckland in 30 years' time. If we don't have rapid transit on rail, it is not going to happen.
Well, if we don't have it with freight,
then it's going to get even worse.
It's going to be so locked up with trucks, mate.
Well, this is it.
I mean,
it's
all those
balance, isn't it?
greenhouse people, gas people, zealots out there, who, and I've got no problem with riding bikes. I can ride a bike, and I walk to work. But the easiest way is if you take
transportation is the biggest problem.
Containers off 150 trucks and put them on even a diesel train, it only uses a diesel of 27 trucks. So you've got a huge bite of greenhouse gas straight away before you even electrify the train.
And we will electrify too.
And we will eventually electrify. A lot of you electrify trains. We do have to be a bit more rational and less emotional about all our decisions. In a blaze of a greenhouse gas fervour, we rushed into buying these electric ferries, which I think will be lemons really. We could have actually done quite a lot better with low emission diesels and perhaps having hydrofoils.
But I think
we're stuck with what we've done. But everything, less emotion and more rationality in our finances will be good.
It is, but I think that's a bigger story that I want to talk to you about as well, because I think I'm interested to hear what your thinking was after the LTP process, because what I see from the outside is a council that has a budget that's actually really big. It's enormous.
Oh, this is a big business, mate.
Right? It's a big business.
You know, all those people who say they're chairs of various big businesses, hey, man, have a look at this one, mate.
But I look at that and I go, how much of this stuff do you have to do?
Yeah.
What must you do? And how much of this is by choice?
Upon us.
Yeah. And so to me, there is a tension in terms of not everything is done by choice. I'm quite curious to know how much of the stuff that's kind of imposed upon you versus how much of the stuff that you really think really kind of makes this city run.
Well, there's a mixture of those things. There's some obvious ones which we shouldn't do, like the Citizens Advice Bureau is something that everyone loves.
Sure.
And
But
it's
why do we
like
fund
motherhood and Jesus, and it's good, and we've got to keep it. But over 90% of what it does is be the shop front for the government. Yes. Because the government's moved things online. Most people can't do that. Most of what people go to Citizens Advice Bureau have got trouble with the Justice Department, the Immigration Department, driver licences, fines. No, not council things, not rates, not the things that we deliver, not footpaths, not the stuff we do. And so it needs to be here, but it doesn't need to be done by us. And then some of the other things that we would like not to do, I have some councillors who are quite emotionally attached to a few things, and they like to inflict that upon us as well. So COB is inflicted upon us because the government isn't doing a task it should be doing. But also we do tend to do things because it gets you voted back in again in South Auckland or somewhere other else like that there, or wherever you are. And I kind of get that's a weakness of democracy.
Yep.
Yeah, and
but could we not do better in terms of,
tell me about it.
You know, having a little bit more transparency around, are we getting value for money? Is it consistent with some legal requirement that we have to have, or some purpose that we have chosen? Because as a citizen, you know, I'm a fairly informed citizen.
I'm sure you are.
When I read the documents that come from council on the LTP and other things, it's a lot of work.
My basic creed is, what is the problem you're solving, and can we do it better, faster, cheaper? And that will wipe out a lot of things that are done, to be honest.
Well, this is it, right? But like, even you couldn't kind of impose that discipline on the LTP, right? Because so much of the stuff in the LTP doesn't fit that criteria.
Well, that's possibly true, I suppose. But then again, and I get carried because certain flavours come rushing through. Value capture seems to have been a thing that's been captured by people. I'd rather not have to capture that value, just do it cheaper. But what do you think about it?
So I think value capture makes a lot of sense if you're really disciplined in what you're trying to do. Right?
That's my thing. But
you have to be very disciplined. So if it's, for example, planning gains. So for example, I've just zoned rural land to residential, and I'm going to take a share of that planning gain of that land value, fine. Or I'm going to put in a new corridor of transport, and that's going to massively uplift the land values of that space. There is a case for that. But you've got to be really horses for courses with value capture, because New Zealand doesn't have a good track record of doing this.
What happens is the developers capture it, mate.
Well, at the moment, that's what happened.
The idea is one, mate. I've captured it myself, and I'll look at the other.
It is done quite successfully in some parts of the world, and Singapore is a very good example.
It has to be done with way more discipline than we've applied to anything we do, because we have a perfect track record here of overestimating benefits and underestimating costs of everything.
But that's the political incentive, right? When you've got a project you really want to sell, there is always a consultant who's willing to give you a benefit that's going to be very high.
Well, we listen to the people who we allow the consultants who are going to benefit to tell us what the benefits are.
The incentives are misaligned. But, you know, as a consultant, I've got to be careful with what I say, right? Because the reality is this is how we get paid. And it's really awkward, right? Are you really going to get the most independent advice from somebody who relies on your payments?
Well, I suppose you could set up to be I'm just going to do the assessment of these and not do the designs or not be involved in it. That's not a bad idea. Separate the thing. We made a mistake with the City Rail Link. Breaks every rule of doing a project. I mean, it's not a bad project, but I would never have entered a contract like that for my own money. And I do spend money on infrastructure. And it shocks me what a mess we've got into on that one there. They allowed the designers of the railway stations not to have anything to do with paying for them. So we've got these bloody cathedrals coming. You're going into there to catch a train. You're not going in there to worship. Unbelievable.
That ownership of from the design to delivery that requires large enough businesses with the know-how and nous, right? I think New Zealand has very few of those businesses that can do that well. I look at in Australia, you've got some amazing businesses that will do everything from design to funding, financing, and delivery. And they want to do it because they have full control.
You've got to have everyone aligning their incentives. You don't necessarily need one thing, but you don't want to have things aligned where they make their money out of increasing the size of things. We got sold this thing about vertical integration. We had a good example of Downers are doing a great job in managing the unsealed roads in Rodney because they don't own a quarry. So they don't actually force us to buy lots and lots of quarry stuff. So they just get the dirt back out of the drains or the grader and mix it with the dirt that's there, and they get a nice smooth surface. Anyway, I think we've had a bit of a crack here. I don't know, we might finish with something here, but I'm going to ask you what some of the silly things. Your wine or beer?
Wine or beer? Wine.
Okay, I'm beer and then wine. Warriors or the Blues?
Blues.
Blues. Good choice. All Blacks or the Black Caps?
All Blacks.
Good boy. Cricket or knitting?
Cricket.
Sorry, I don't find it terribly interesting, cricketing. So I'll lose all my Indian supporters.
I enjoy watching cricket. I haven't played cricket in years, but
all my
love watching
Indian friends love cricket, and I kind of respect that. But
it's like a religion.
I'd rather go surfing.
Well, we're going to have a surf thing soon.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. It'll be fun. Okay, thanks for coming in, Shamubeel. It's nice to have half an hour with someone who's economically rational.